Hello and welcome to Ecumenical Matters, the Father Ted podcast. I'm your host, James McAnespy. So this is the YouTube version of the podcast. I've taken out some of the material that dates the podcast and tried to make it more timeless. So please like and subscribe. Thanks and bless you.
That would be an ecumenical matter!
Hello and welcome to Ecumenical Matters, the Father Ted podcast, where we're discussing Season 2, Episode 3, Tentacles of Doom. And this is a really exciting show this week because for start, it's our first road show. We are here in London. It's just myself and my two guests, Jordan Birch and Olly Allsop. They'll say hello in a second. But also, this is the episode where our podcast name has come from, Ecumenical Matters. So this is a particularly meta little episode of podcast time. As I said, we've got here Jordan Birch and Olly Allsop. Do you want to just go around the room and introduce yourselves and what you're up to?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jordan Birch. I'm a comedian and comedy writer. I'm doing a show in Edinburgh soon about bondage. So that'll be something. Love this episode. Thanks very much for having me.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
And looking forward to taking it, which I love, analysing it until I don't love it anymore.
Until you find all the tiny little mistakes and just ruins it for yourself. Brilliant.
Come to think of it, that's what I do with everything I love.
I was going to bring up the bondage, by the way. I didn't know that was the subject of your comedy. So
yeah. I mean, I'm finding I can't fill an hour just with jokes about bondage. So there's other stuff in it. It's got characters and stories and things. But yeah, there's a lot of bondage and sexy costumes and things like that.
Well, bondage has come up on the podcast before. Vince suggested that maybe Mrs Doyle is into her BDSM.
Interesting.
She is servile, but she's also very domineering. So which side is she on? So maybe you and Vince could have a conversation about that at some point.
I think she would qualify as a lifestyle submissive, probably.
Right. Okay.
She's a whole other level of it. She doesn't even need the sexual aspect.
Well, that's what I was saying. I don't think she's sexual at all.
Yeah, it's all mental with her.
Yeah,
definitely.
So
it's a good theory. It's a good theory.
Just beside you there, we have Olly Allsop. So say hello, Olly.
Hi, I'm Olly, and I'm a comedy writer, or I pretend to be, or I'm trying to be. Probably most relevantly, I've been writing some things, getting some people such as your current host, Mr. James McAnespy, to perform them. If you're listening to this thing on SoundCloud, then it would be very much appreciated if, after the end of this episode, go to like other things that are following or being followed by the Ecumenical Matters. Then if you look for a thing called This Is Definitely What Happened, which are I sort of settled on calling them monologues, but I don't know if that's the closest I can get to what they are. But
yeah, they're sort of fictional monologues. Would that be fair? So basically, I played Alex Higgins in the recent one. Literally just finished recording about half an hour ago. So
all of them are like from the first person point of view of either a dead historical person or celebrity or a mythical or fictional person, like Poseidon, the god of the sea, or something like that. But don't look for that one because we haven't put it on there yet. But if you tune in next week, we'll have put James's one on there. But in the meantime, there are about 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So please give them a listen, and if you like them, give them a like.
We'll actually go straight into the episode now because this is a classic episode. It may go into one of our, I think it's a top 5 contender, this one.
Could be.
It's called Tentacles of Doom, and we have discussed the naming conventions of titles of Father Ted episodes, and that they're very nondescript, and this one is very descript, but doesn't seem to mean anything.
Doesn't seem to mean anything. What do we think? Why is it called Tentacles of Doom?
I assumed it was some kind of like reference to some kind of medieval religious thing from like a painting by Bosch or somebody like that. Or it's like some religious. It's got to be. I mean, it's a religious. These guys are priests, Ted and Dougal. And there's got to be some sort of old.
Well, that's what I thought.
Hell and fire and brimstone and
some demonic figure or something.
Pain and blood and guts and.
Well, the only thing I could even think of is the H.P. Lovecraft character. What do you call him? The big thing with the tentacles.
Octopus.
No.
Octopus. Squid.
Kraken's good. Kraken's good.
It could be a kraken.
I think it's a different episode
Cthulhu.
where.
Cthulhu.
I think it's a different episode. It's not this one where Bishop Brennan says, the Kraken awakes, and he's referring to Father Jack, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's a different one. It's not this one.
Isn't it? Well,
this is pretty out there. What do you think of this? In the episode, when Dougal suggests they watch Aliens, maybe that was originally Tentacles of Doom, and they changed it in the script, but liked the title Tentacles of Doom.
It might be one. We should ask Robin if he's done an angry review of a film called Tentacles of Doom.
Well, I googled it, and all that came up was references to this episode.
Yeah, it
So-
doesn't seem to be a stock title or anything like that.
It does sound like something that would be a stock title.
B-movie.
Yeah,
Roger Corman or
sci-fi,
Edward or
serial sci-fi or
the
something.
best I can think is that the bishops are the tentacles, and if they screw this up, it could go very badly for them.
And
they're the tentacles.
Well, that's as good a theory as anyway. I'm sure if I had to listen to DVD commentary, they probably.
There's a DVD commentary.
Oh, I have. Yeah,
I don't have the DVDs. I've just been watching them on all four.
I had to
Yeah.
listen. I've gone beyond the fucking Call of Duty for this, I tell you, because I heard the episode properly a few nights ago, which I was very happy to do because it is probably my favourite
Right.
episode of Father Ted. I could narrow it down to this or one other, I reckon.
Don't keep us in suspense.
Okay, well, it's a later. The other one that I could definitely say it's one of these two, and the other one is a later one with a weird jumper cake man who comes
Oh,
to
yeah.
Oh, that's
Or McLove.
yeah.
visit Mrs Doyle.
So he's
I don't have
based
a
on a
Willy.
character.
Yeah.
He's based on an
Yeah.
actual person, Daniel O'Donnell.
I've heard of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like a really twee singer, and he's just beloved by grannies.
Yeah,
like, he's
yeah.
Well,
uh,
I mean, I think if you put a gun to my head, I'd say probably this one because this episode, Tentacles of Doom, because it's got my favourite individual just moment ever in Father Ted. When the really elderly, really frail priest is explaining he's got a heart condition, and before he can even get to the end of his sentence, Dougal, physically leaps into the sort of frame of your TV screen of the scene you can see because you can't, and screaming at the top of his voice.
Yeah, don't make any sudden noises, and then Dougal just shouts in his face because, of course, Aliens is on TV that night after the news.
That's probably my favourite bit as well, actually. And I know everybody picks up on the line "Bishops love sci-fi," which is very funny.
Yeah.
But I really like the line, "Come on, let's all have a big lads' night."
Yeah.
That's funny to me.
See, Dougal loves just hanging out with the lads.
Yeah.
I genuinely think he loves the whole idea of just this ensconced little bubble that they have of we can do whatever we want, and we've got a few duties on Sunday mornings to say mass and say a few funerals.
Yeah.
And the rest of the time,
He has the kind of contentness that would in principle come from being a good priest.
well, exactly. And it's unfortunate.
Ted really doesn't.
No.
So Ted's got a sort of he's more self-aware than that. You see, he realizes how terrible his situation is. Whereas
Yeah.
Dougal's just like, oh, this is class. Every so often we get a new set of priests, and sometimes they're jackasses, and sometimes they're a great crack. Dougal and Ted, they seem to have a real love for sci-fi movies because we have been getting a list together of different sci-fi movies they've been referencing. So Aliens, not Alien, I noticed.
No, that's true.
No- not-
Aliens.
It was the sequel by not Michael Bay. What do you call him? James Cameron. Yeah, that was his big breakout, and he went on to do Titanic, of course, and Avatar.
Yep.
But yeah, there's been a few is Jaws 2 when they were doing the charades when Jack was dead. Not Jaws 1. It's a different shark.
yeah.
It's a different shark.
shark.
Film.
Yeah.
Very different film, Ted. It's a very
The episode opens with Dougal reading Gary Lineker's book of ghost stories. Now, Gary Lineker clearly has a multi-talented persona because not only is he the BBC's prime sports presenter on the golf and the football, I think he used to play a bit of football as well. Do you know
Well,
anything
I
about
know
that?
nothing
You're asking the wrong man.
Yeah.
I know nothing about football, but I've heard. I knew that, so he must be pretty famous.
Yeah, so he must
I
have
knew
done
that
all
he
right
was
for
a
himself.
footballer.
Yeah, all I know is he's a famous crisp salesman and
Yeah.
adulterer.
And
yeah,
adulterer,
yeah.
yes. And now to add to that CV, a paranormal author.
Of the three.
Yeah, that's a great CV to be able to pluck out at any time, you know.
Yeah.
It's really nice. I love the open to the show because when we open, we see Dougal reading Gary Lineker's book of ghost stories, which is very funny. But then it's not so easy to see. But Ted is reading Secret Love, which is the story of Michael Cleary, the
Yeah.
priest, the singing priest who had a couple of kids with his housekeeper, and so that's the book that Ted is reading. I think that's very funny too.
I enjoyed watching the episode the other day. I hadn't seen it for a long time, but then last night I tried it with the DVD commentary as well, which is brings up why it's quite nice to have a conversation because there's a commentary with only Graham Linehan on his own, and he's just it's kind of him being really tough on himself. Saying we should have done this differently and this. Oh god! But he mentioned something about this book at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Well, I did listen to DVD commentary of Big Train back in the day, his sketch show that he did, and basically all it was anytime there was a female actor came on screen, he'd be like, oh, that's Julia, we didn't use her half enough. Like, god damn it, why didn't I use her? We had all these great talented actors who just went to it, man. Like, that's all it was for most of it, and just what he did wrong. It's like, Jesus Christ, Graham, take your praise.
I think maybe this one's a little bit more up and down. There's a few points where he congratulates himself and the rest of them, but there's a lot of self-flagellation as well going on, and him saying, "Oh, the scene where the water comes out of the sewer is too obvious," and just he's obsessed with the kind of mechanics of it. I think I get the impression that like Arthur Matthews was more like the sort of jokes man, and Linehan was more like the sort of mechanical plot structure.
Do everything by the format sort of thing.
That's the impression. Maybe that's a bit like black and white, but
well, we don't know. We're purely speculating from a fan's point of view. Hence the podcast. You know, in 20 years' time when they dig this up for the 40th anniversary, and they'll be like, look, this is what the fans thought at the time, and they can correct us or otherwise. I've got in touch with him on Twitter, but he never responded. So
typical.
He's
responded to me a few times.
Really?
Yeah.
Then what kind of stuff did he say?
Answering the questions I asked.
Oh, okay, right.
Wasn't about Father Ted.
Were they bondage related?
No, they're mostly about the business of comedy writing, and a couple of things that I'd remember he'd said in an interview, but I couldn't remember what it was, so I asked what it was. He told me.
Well, you're gonna have to dig them out then and post them on the Facebook page.
Okay.
Yeah. So Ted and Dougal both have ghost stories. Have you ever seen or encountered ghosts?
As a matter of fact, yes, I have. When I was very, very young, so young that you don't even you don't have a mind that perceives the difference between what should be and what shouldn't be. If you see a ghost at that age, it's not scary because you don't think that you shouldn't see a ghost.
Oh, I see what you mean. Right? Yes.
So
yeah.
I didn't see a ghost. I saw a woman wearing an old-fashioned dress.
Okay,
that's what I saw.
Like a sort of Mrs. Havisham sort of number.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so but it didn't look ethereal or scary or anything like that. So all I saw was a woman in a dress in an old back garden, and I said to my mum, "Who's that woman?" And she said, "What woman?" And there you go.
Ah.
And in the house I live at the moment, because weirdly I live on a house that was built over the morgue where all of Jack the Ripper's victims would have been brought, and hundreds of other people. So
right.
I haven't actually seen a ghost like in front of my face, but there's a lot of stuff.
Ghostly goings on.
Yeah, it happens every day, sort of thing. You start becoming convinced.
Yeah, well, I mean, I went to France during France '98 with my mum and my aunt, and we were saying because the tournament was on and they hadn't realised this, we were having real trouble finding places to stay, and we hadn't pre-booked or anything. The way we do holidays is just to sort of land there and deal with stuff.
Yep.
So we ended up around.
Not relaxing.
No. Keeps everyone on their toes, you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's what you want from a holiday.
Yeah. But we ended up on train station hotel near Gare du Nord, which is like the really sort of sleazy end of Paris. And
just write that down when I go.
Yeah.
Gare du Nord.
And it was this really old building with like them elevator doors that you have to sort of cages that you have to open and stuff. And but that barely worked, so you nearly got up quicker just by taking the stairs and everything. But anyway, we were sleeping, and my mum and my aunt were drinking away. And apparently I woke up in the middle, and I vaguely remember this, and I just kept tugging at the blankets at the bottom of the bed, and they turned around and said, "James, what are you doing?" Yeah. And I said, "Somebody's tugging the blankets." He goes, "Who's tugging them?" "That boy there." And I was pointing directly at the end of the bed.
Dude, that's scary.
And apparently my mum couldn't sleep for the rest of like the holiday, like
totally believable.
And I do have a vague recollection of seeing like the sort of the figure of somebody like just tugging away at my blankets. And then about 6 months later, Halloween, she was watching This Morning with Richard and Judy, and they were mentioning how station hotels have a lot of people just coming there, and because it's such a lonely, desolate place, there's a lot of suicides and stuff.
Yeah. It's pretty weird, man.
Yeah, so
pretty weird.
But having said all that, I don't believe in ghosts anymore. So
okay, I don't believe in ghosts either. It doesn't really affect.
But it's still a good story, though, isn't it? Yeah.
I tell you what, I keep things secret from my girlfriend that I find and experience in the house, because if she knew all of them, we'd have to move.
Oh, okay.
Like, seriously, there's weird stuff.
Bear in mind, this podcast is going to be basically public, just before you go any further, and
that's
descriptions of like.
Yeah.
I won't say what it was, but there's stuff. Nothing like blood dripping down the walls and get out, because then you'd make a fortune, wouldn't you? You'd just write the paper and they'd come and have a look.
Make that a museum tour.
Yeah, exactly. But weird little things like things going missing and puddles of water and stuff. I know it doesn't sound scary, but
when
anything inexplicable.
Yeah,
is weird.
It all adds
exactly.
to a greater thing.
It all adds.
But to bring it back to sort of vaguely Father Ted, my RE teacher balked at the idea of even the mention of ghosts. So somebody asked him, did he believe in ghosts? Just straight out asked him, and he goes, ghosts. All the while he's preaching to us about a higher power and all this, and it's like, well, how can you believe that in blind faith and not believe in ghosts?
So how can you believe in the thing explicitly called the Holy Ghost? I mean, is that
yes,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
Is that a different thing? Is
It's
that?
a different type of ghost.
But if it's the only one that you're allowed to believe in, then it's not so much the Holy Ghost; it's just the ghost.
The ghost.
It's like no more holy or less holy than any other ghost.
Because
there aren't any others.
well, exactly, yeah. So
I don't know. Something's wrong somewhere.
I just remember that really sticking in my craw when his reaction to that question. But anyway, to get back to Ted, then. So they go to the bathroom, and the bathroom's looking sultrily pink today. But
Love the bathroom. Any shot of the 70s bathroom is funny.
it is it's wonderful. It's almost like neon glow.
Yeah,
the pink
I
wallpaper.
would decorate my own bathroom like that, just as a nod to people who used my toilet who liked Father Ted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go round to your house someday and I'll expect to
have a good long piss.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they can't get the toilet to flush, and Ted tries to look down to see what's going on. And when Dougal tries it, the toilet does flush. Now, this Ted had some eyes on him. He was ready to take him outside and level him.
It's good acting. Yeah, he genuinely does look furious.
Yeah.
Which, for a comedian, it's good. It's good.
He plays the part perfectly.
It's brilliant.
And then they find out what the problem is Jack has been stashing bottles of Jack in the toilet. It's probably messing around with the pressure of the flush. But whenever Jack's using it, you need to get that stuff away as hard and as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And you need to get it as far away as you can. Unfortunately for Ted, Sierra Leone, which is where he hopes it goes, just seems to be at the end of their garden. So they're going to have a bit of a plumbing problem, and it will come back to haunt them. Now, on the previous episode, Vince had mentioned that the setup was very obvious. You knew it was going to come back to somebody. This one wasn't quite so obvious as who that somebody was.
I didn't think so. I didn't think it was obvious.
Not this one, but remember last week when Tom...
Sewage tanker.
Yeah, that was it.
Right.
Because as you mentioned in your notes here, sewage is funny.
Fire is funny, sewage is funny. Yes, Graham Linehan likes both of those.
Yeah.
And rightly so.
Well,
I forgot that there were two big sewage jokes 2 episodes in a row.
It wasn't quite 2 episodes in a row. I think it was the first, so it was the one before the last one. It was just the last podcast because I haven't released it.
Still a lot of fast-flowing sewage,
Yeah. You saw that the geyser of sewage was going to come out, and you knew somebody was going to get victimized by it. Yep. But you didn't, it was a genuine surprise when it was.
That's what he's on about. Sorry.
I didn't necessarily think that someone was necessarily going to get hit by it because it's visually funny. Because it's funny for somebody to flush a toilet and for them to think they fixed it, but for it to have gone so wrong. Honestly, the first time I saw it, I did not assume that we're going to see that again necessarily.
I don't think I did. I mean, this is Linehan being extremely harsh on himself in the commentary. That's the bit when that bit comes up and he's like, "Oh, it's too obvious. It's too much a good way." You think, well, I mean, even if it was, I think we'd forgive it in this episode, which is a really kind of funny and the plot is a joke. Not just the dialogue, but the whole plot is a joke as well. I mean, I don't think it's the biggest. It doesn't bother me,
No, it doesn't bother me either. But it's as you say, they are particularly hard on themselves. But when were you watching Father Ted? Were you watching as kids?
Oh God, I can't remember. It must have been since being a kid, yeah, because I can't remember not watching Father Ted. I definitely have a very specific memory of I would have been about 12, and when you're that age, you don't get on with your parents that well.
Yeah,
so it's okay now. But it's not just my mum and me, and we're watching TV, and I was sort of flicking through, and I said, "Oh, Father Ted, this is good," and she said, "Oh, I don't want to watch Father Ted." And I said, "Well, have you ever seen it?" She said, "No, I don't think it'd be my thing." And it was. Is it called Hell, where they go on the caravan trip? And it was that one, and we were both sat there in hysterics for the whole thing because obviously it's funny. It's funny when you have more people to laugh.
Yes, yeah.
And so I do remember that she thought this isn't for me, but ended up literally crying.
I think a lot of people would have the same reaction. They assume it's not for them. But if they watched it, they'd probably find themselves laughing a lot more than they would when they watch what they think is their favourite show.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I remember the TV listings were perhaps not quite as far as off-putting, but just they just failed. Because I can remember in whatever, I think it was Radio Times that my mum used to buy every week when I was, a youth, and they listed it it could have been anything. It could have been any old rubbish 70s sitcom. It was just these 3 priests live together, and they're so mismatched, the 3 of them. One of them's old and drunk, and you just think, well, it's just another sitcom.
Yeah,
you had to actually. For whatever reason you decide to tune in, or you were channel hopping and land in it and find it was a completely new sense of humour at the time.
Yeah, there's really anarchic, and I mean, the reason it's so popular, it's popular here, but in Ireland, it's it's gone way beyond popular. It is just now a piece of Irish artifact, an artifact of Irish art now, just because of the time it was coming in, the time it was happening. Like, Ireland was actually starting to get self-confident with itself and the Irish culture and everything, and the fact that it was brilliant. And there's jokes in here. I will bring a couple up that you might not get because they're specifically to Irish people. Like, I think people sort of dismiss it because the production values are very low. Well, they're not the production values, but the presence of the production values. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But that's true of a lot of great sitcoms, though. Yeah, you're right, though. If you just look at it for 5 seconds, you might get that impression, definitely.
Well, I mean, if you look at Miranda or something, like,
I'd rather not.
But like the production value, they clearly got very good, production values on that, and it's easier for somebody who's not necessarily into comedy, like wouldn't call themselves a comedy fan. Yeah, they would flick over and they would stop. And
I would
chuckle.
recommend to any non-comedy fan they watch that show, definitely.
Yeah. We've had a few board games. Again, they've amassed quite a collection of board games already, and we've got new good additions here. We've got chess and Buckaroo.
Chess or Buckaroo.
Yeah.
You can't have both in the world. Someone's got very strict rules in this parochial house. It's like, chess or Buckaroo.
Well, what would you suggest then? Using the knight and the bishop onto the horse to see what can actually make it buck first. Do you ever play Buckaroo?
I
think you could play one then the other. You could warm up with Buckaroo and then get into the
chess boxing.
And then get into the
Buckaroo
sort of
chess.
Buckaroo chess.
Slightly more demanding world of chess afterwards.
Well, how long does the game of Buckaroo last?
Well, it depends how young you are.
Depends
how sort of steady your hand is. I have played it as a kid, not in quite a while. I remember I was bad at it and never beat my parents.
So what actually triggers the bucklap then?
It's a certain.
That's the point. You don't know, do you? It's
a certain weight, and the objects will go over that weight.
And then it's just a matter of time.
It's just
or something?
a matter of which one you put on. Yeah, I think that's how it works. I don't think it's particularly high tech.
Well, it was popular, and it did pass an hour or so for entertainment at that time. Did you ever play chess?
I play chess now, yeah.
Do you?
I do, yeah.
I must give you a game. I represented my school at Northern Ireland level in chess.
You'll beat me.
I probably won't because we went all the way up to Belfast, which was pretty glamorous for me back in the day. I was about 11. Basically, we had this lunchtime from my school in Oma. So we had this lunchtime competition. So we only had maybe 15 or 20 minutes. So instead of actually being a full game of chess, it was like a points-based system. So a queen would be worth 9 points and a bishop would be worth 4 points, that sort of way. So I was just very aggressive and got in amongst the pawns and the bishops and just like cleaned house on one side and then just killed the queen and always won. And when I went up to Belfast, it was actual rules, and I got killed by the three move checkmate, which I'd never seen before.
I didn't know there were like different versions of the rules for chess.
I think that was just a teacher had made that just to make it fit
within
the time we had.
If you've got like a set time limit, you can either play what's called blitz, so you play very quick, and if you run out of time, then you lose. Or you can play to a set time, and then the player who's got the pieces worth the most points on the board wins.
I was useless at chess. I got taught.
And there's also
by my dad,
there's Fischer chess, invented by Bobby Fischer.
How are you spelling Fischer?
With a C.
CH.
I thought you meant there was like a huge chasm down the middle of the board, and the pieces.
That sounds like a brilliant game.
Fell down it.
But no, and you have your line of pawns, but all of your main pieces are in a random order.
So they're not. So your two rooks would be beside each other or something.
They could be. It's randomly worked out at the beginning of the game, and you mirror each other, so you both have the same random assortment. So you can't have any book learning. You can't have any memorised strategies.
Ah, okay.
So it's a much purer, harder form of chess.
Okay, yeah. So you can't just like have an opening that always works for you.
No, because the pieces are in different places every time. I hate it. It's really hard.
So is that how you play then?
I hate it. No, sometimes I play a game, but I need the book learning. Definitely.
Nice. Well, I'll try and give you a game.
Fine.
I'm not great, but and I haven't played in years, so you'll probably will destroy me. But it'd be nice to be educated. But we get on to speak about the Holy Stone of Clonrickert then. Now, it has actually been mentioned before in the show, which I only noticed when I was going back through the episodes. It was mentioned in the last episode of Season 1 that it was actually brought down from... It was moved from Fermanagh, which is a place in Northern Ireland, down to the island because it wasn't doing enough business in Fermanagh.
Oh, that rings a bell, yeah.
But now that it's been upgraded to a Class 2 relic, they've doubled the price on it, so it went from £10 per viewing up to £20. So I wonder how much it was costing in Fermanagh when they were actually up there.
Good question. So that's really pushing And they do this a lot, pushing the bounds of how stupid Dougal can be, and it be believable.
Well, this episode...
That's nowhere near the strongest example of that, though, is it? I mean,
no,
just a sort of he could have misheard one word in his life.
No, I guess you're right.
I was about to say this episode is actually a bit more, a bit tamer on him in his mental capacity, because a lot of it you could sort of justify as saying maybe he's just got a very odd form of dyslexia, where he just mixes stuff up in his head or something.
Yeah, but that would take a lot of the comedy out of it, wouldn't it?
It would. We have a couple of Class 1 relics. Now, to get a Class 1 relic is really, really hard. You have to either do time travel or reincarnation or cloning dinosaurs or something. So basically, the only Class 1 relic I could think of was Stargate.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Is this a real system that the Catholic Church has? I haven't looked it up.
I don't know. I never thought.
What's the Catholic Church's position on cloning dinosaurs? Do they think it's a good or a bad thing?
They don't like cloning.
Cloning anything in general.
Yeah.
No.
Do you have to have one dinosaur to start with, or is it cloning it from just DNA?
As I understand, you can mix it with frog DNA.
From a mosquito that's in the amber of a tree.
Well, that's why the Catholic Church is against that, because that's like meddling with nature. You're mixing the species.
Like playing with God.
If it was one dinosaur to start with, and then bang, you got a second one by cloning, I think the Catholic Church would be a lot more tolerant.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
They didn't like Dolly the sheep, so as far as I remember,
so the dinosaurs probably out as well.
I know within the last couple of years they've come out and said, oh, by the way, if it turns out that aliens are real, that's completely fine and doesn't change the belief structure in any way. We can just cope with that.
They do have a habit of that. There is
before stuff actually comes out.
Yeah, like there's this the infallibility of popes, which basically means the pope, whatever the pope says is God's law.
Yep.
Recently, we've had 3 popes in very quick succession there, and one of them decided that limbo was no longer a thing.
Yeah.
Limbo, which is the state you're in between death and crossing over, not even to purgatory. You're not even at purgatory yet. You're at the sort of half junction. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, if you're in it at the point where it gets cancelled by the Pope, though, I mean,
you get immediate upgrade to first class.
It's like paying full price on day of travel sort of thing.
But it just means that all those people who wasted their prayers getting people out of limbo, like they could have done so much more with that. You only have so much credit, I'm sure. And people have been wasting it getting people out of limbo.
Yep.
I did get told that we got told in a lecture or something that the Pope at some point, it would have been a few popes ago I guess, he endorsed like Darwinism and evolution and natural selection and said that was right, which previously
they probably would have denied it. Well, Galileo had a real difficult time with the Catholic Church for daring to suggest that the earth went around the sun and not the other way about. So they do have a history of
Giordano Bruno went even further and said not only is all of that true, but there's countless Earth-like planets in the universe, many of which will have intelligent life just like us, and they burned him alive. And now they've said, oh yeah, that's fine if it turns out to be true.
Well, it's a sort of easy thing to say because it's quite likely to happen by the law of averages, but it's kind of like a fairly sort of
you still have to be the first person to say it.
Yeah.
What's his name, sorry?
Giordano Bruno.
I haven't actually.
He did other stuff as well that they didn't like translating Bibles and teaching people how to read them. They weren't a fan of that at the time either.
Oh, okay. Well, see, in that case, then they were justified. So
they're coming clearly.
The heretic who was actually teaching the good book, freak. We get another example of Dougal not quite being on board with the whole God thing. In fact, this whole episode is just about the message and how it doesn't really compute when you actually sit down and think about it.
Yeah.
They've got different ways of showing that. Obviously, the most obvious one is Dougal actually converting one of the bishops.
Yeah.
You want to bring up the fire is funny because Jack's head goes on fire. So smoking is a very dangerous habit.
True.
And especially if you've got wild, scraggly hair like Jack.
Well, he's clearly got a different hairpiece for that particular burning scene, hasn't he?
Very
it does
obvious.
jump out. But that's it's forgivable because it's on fire. But yeah, fire. I think fire is not only fire. Firing improves whatever work of art you have. If you've got moving pictures, fire is good. In the same way that vast quantities of sewage, it just makes it better.
Yeah. In fire, you were mentioning the IT crowd.
There's fire in that. I can't remember if there's 2 episodes, or there's definitely one where
the screensaver. I think it's a screensaver.
Oh yeah, and the one where he's talking about Centre Parks. His girlfriend was in a fire at Centre Parks, and he's got the Centre Parks diorama on his desk, and he's trying to work. How can there be a fire at Centre Parks?
Right.
And I got a memory of Moss saying 4. Oh no, I mean 5. No, I mean fire. Which, that's really out there. But yeah, I think fire improves things, and you don't see it that often in sitcoms.
You don't, because it's a production nightmare, basically, fire. Because
that was the 90s you're talking about.
Yeah.
This is 20 years ago, this episode of Father Ted. It was probably on TV.
96, so it would have been.
Yeah. So it's 20 years ago. I mean, now they probably just wouldn't. Well, I suppose the IT crowd's more recent. Did they actually have a fire in the IT crowd?
Yeah, there's fire. There's real fire. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Well, you can do it. I mean, it's a production nightmare. You have to have like the little gas pipes that just have little holes to spurt gas through, and then just
Like the one around the back of my oven. I know.
Yeah. And that's how so that's how they create it. But it is, getting insurance for it, getting everything fireproofed. If there is actual kindling and stuff. But putting it on Jack's head, that was a serious fucking big stunt they did.
It was in shot for quite a while as well.
Yeah.
It's not just a couple of seconds. He has to walk over and sit down, and it's.
And that was only 5 years after Terminator, when somebody was walking through fire. Yeah, but they did actually aim for these big stunts, because a couple of people have gone through windows and stuff, and it is very hard to recreate that sort of stuff. So
I'm still impressed by Father Ted, or presumably the stunt double, actually getting run over. I've never seen somebody actually get run over for a joke.
Well,
I mean, that's really good.
Ugly naked guys, we called them, at the campsite in hell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, holding on to the front.
Holding on.
Yeah.
Because that would be very hard to do in the very first episode as well. The bench that gets lifted up.
Yep.
But yeah, they did have these big stunts, and they couldn't. If it was on a big budget production, they would have a lot more safety harnesses and stuff, which you couldn't really see on these stunts. So they're just winging it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're all. I think everybody involved in it was a comedy person in one way or another. And the most important question is this funny?
Can we make it funnier? Yeah.
And if it is, then you do it.
Dougal has new bedwear.
He-Man and Skeletor.
Oh no! Well, I meant the T-shirt. But
Oh yeah. Oh, it's a priest thing. You wouldn't understand.
That's right. Yeah.
That's funny.
What's the He-Man? Oh, that's the actual
bedspread he has. Yeah, he always has
out of date
children's.
at the time, I think.
Yeah, that would have been about 12 years after.
But-
I suppose
He-Man.
from when he was a
When he was
child.
a kid, he would have carried on with it. Yeah.
So maybe that's what arrested his development, is just when he watched He-Man, he couldn't go any further. Was Orson Welles in He-Man as well? No, it was Transformers. Sorry.
Should have been if he wasn't. But
Yeah, he should have been.
playing who though? Skeletor? I don't know. Who would Orson Welles be?
I can't actually remember He-Man. I genuinely switched away from He-Man. I find He-Man shite.
I must say I have a distinct memory of as a kid watching it once and thinking this is terrible.
This is awful,
I'm
yeah.
not watching this.
And my cousin, who lived in London, he was about 7 or 8 years older than me. He was sort of my window into sort of nerd culture and geek culture and everything. Like, he first taught me, about Lego and Batman and everything, and he loved it. So I thought, oh, he likes it. It must be good. And I just could not get on board with it. Whereas Batman the animated series, I still love. I still watch on Amazon Prime, so. But Dougal's a big fan.
Yeah.
But
is that T-shirt, that is a priest thing, you wouldn't understand. Is that a reference to a famous T-shirt?
Well,
It sounds like it would be.
that was. Do you remember I said a couple of minutes ago that there's little things in the theme of the episode is
Right.
that nobody really understands any of this if you actually sit down. So that's a good way of like just getting out of. That's a sort of a different way of saying that's an ecumenical matter.
Right.
It's a priest thing you wouldn't understand.
That's
I assume.
true.
I don't know if it was actually a real T-shirt, but I'm sure there was at the time. It's a girl thing you wouldn't understand.
Probably.
And he has a Bjork poster in the background. Did you notice?
Did not notice that.
Yeah, I would not peg Dougal as a Bjork fan.
This is one of the great things, though, about shows like this and other good comedies. They have such a high replay value.
Yeah,
And every time you'll get something.
you'll spot the little.
It won't be that you're laughing again at the same joke because it's very funny. You'll actually be getting a new joke.
A new joke,
years after it, and you'll think, how did I miss that?
Well, along with Bjork, there was J.R. Ewing. I Shot J.R. So
Yep.
it's not just Tom who's a fan of Dallas. And then in a different scene, just beside the window, there was a picture of John Wayne. Now, John Wayne, I can't actually explain that one. When John Wayne made The Quiet Man, it's one of his sort of lesser-known films, but it's like, again, it's part of the Irish canon now, and he's pretty much an honorary Irishman.
Okay.
Like, every Irish family has a copy of The Quiet Man, possibly even 2 or 3. So that's why he would have been there, I think.
Right.
But I can't imagine Dougal being a Bjork fan. He's a Tina Turner fan. He's a Karma Chameleon fan. doesn't really sit well with, whale noises and ethereal Icelandic vocalists.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah.
They should cut that joke in future runs.
Yeah.
Just have a hole in the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just have a blur, like just where the poster was.
Exactly.
I mean, I can imagine it coming in as a verbal joke with Dougal saying I was just enjoying a bit of the old Bjork, Ted.
Yeah.
But it's strange to have it as a visual joke.
Yeah. I mean, well, Bjork was pretty much at her career peak, sort of commercially at that point, because I think that was the time that it's so quiet.
Yeah, that was quite a big
Oh, that sounds
Christmas
about right.
time song, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was it Christmas #1 or did
Probably,
well?
yeah.
Did well around like December.
I'll have to get a sample on the podcast, but I probably won't be able to pay for it.
Bjork seems cool. She'll be all right.
Yeah, she'll be fine. She'll just wear another swan dress to the Oscars or something. It'll be cool. Dougal overreact around bishops, or Ted seems to think so. He wasn't accusing him of anything.
Yeah. That, I mean, if there's one low point in this episode, I mean, because Father Ted is just always so full of like original and like mad and idiosyncratic gags that no other show would have. You kind of think that was going to turn up in some sitcom sometime. That line, you kind of think Father Ted could do a bit better than that, maybe.
Yeah, that's probably the weakest joke of the show.
It's not like a terrible joke.
Yeah,
it's just
fine.
like
It's fine, but compared to how brilliant it normally is, it is quite medium.
I actually like that one.
Yeah, it's a fine joke.
yeah.
It's just I've heard you hear it at other places, don't you?
Well, I genuinely hadn't heard it.
Oh, okay.
I actually didn't remember it either, because I didn't actually. I haven't seen this episode in years, and I must have not got the joke. Like, he wasn't accusing me of anything. Like, where were you? But yeah, I was happy enough with that one.
It's a fine joke.
Yeah,
It's
it'll do the job.
I'm not saying it's really bad. I'm saying it's like
Not as good
some comedy writer or other was going to stumble across that gag one day. It's not one of these ones that only in Father Ted would you get that, which is kind of what's so great about Father Ted. Is that,
See, that's the standard of filler that Father Ted
yeah,
has.
it's
This is
kind
the
of a
filler material.
Yeah.
And we have our second appearance by Larry Duff. Now, you have a few little trivia. We have a few trivia things about Father Larry Duff, but this one, he was involved in a knife throwing, and he had set his beep to be extra loud. Did you think the knife thrower looked like Jesse the Body Ventura?
Now that you mention it, I was trying to put my finger on who he looks like, and yes, remarkably so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know who Jesse?
He's a famous wrestler, mayor, and conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, he's
Mayor.
Yeah,
Or
a politician.
something
Yeah,
politician, conspiracy theorist, and an ex-wrestler.
I think he got into the state senate or something. He was actually quite a high.
Yeah,
ranked
something
politician,
like. I don't want to undersell him or anything. If you're listening, Mr. Ventura.
Yeah, come on to the show if you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you had a few trivia facts about Larry Duff then.
Yeah, I couldn't believe this when I saw it. Larry Duff appears in more episodes than any other recurring character.
Yeah,
Outside of the Four That Live in the House, he's in the most episodes, which is 8.
8 episodes.
Yeah.
And see, the thing is, he only first showed up in the series 2, episode 1, so he wasn't even in the first series. So the frequency of his appearances were like, there must have been like machine gun fire or something. Because if he's in it that much, now I was surprised. I remember saying this to Vince that John and Mary didn't actually show up that much, and they appeared in the first 3 episodes.
Right.
And they only have one more appearance now to come. And I can't remember where it is, but I know what they're doing.
I love them though. I find them probably of all the sort of minor bit parts that don't have a lot to do with the plot, and they come in like Larry Duff and who else do you get? You can't say Bishop Brennan because he's like a proper major character.
Well, he's almost an
Tom,
antagonist.
maybe? Tom, the weird psycho guy.
Yeah.
There's a few who come in, but I love John and Mary, even though it is a very sick joke about this unhappy marriage.
I think it speaks to something common in both English people and Irish people. This different characters we have, and the need to be respectable.
Especially in front of a priest, it would have been.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
Our authority figures might be different, but the emotion is the same.
But like you've been talking before on the previous episodes about different styles or different types of humour, but they get proper fucking nasty, those two.
Yeah,
there's one where Mary says John has a face like a pair of tits.
At least that's one pair between us.
It's like proper nasty.
Yeah, it's vicious, but a lot of people would have recognised that
I recognise it from home.
Yeah, the whole family's at each other's throats, but as soon as somebody's at the door, it's like, yeah, we're back in, we're a lovely happy family, and nobody can say anything bad to us. Yeah.
I think that's why I like those that couple when they turn up because I think it's because they get proper nasty, but it's like in between probably a couple of scenes of Dougal being a bit vacuous and very sort of like a couple of really innocent gags probably, and then like a really nasty one in between, and it's like I like the way they can do all of those things, and it still doesn't seem wrong to change it.
Yeah, it's not jarring, even though you feel like it should be. It still sort of fits like a puzzle piece, like the two. What is the word I'm looking for? Not dichotomies. Maybe dichotomies. Let's stick with dichotomies.
Let's stick with dichotomies.
Yeah.
Let's pretend we're city bankers.
Yeah. Oh, okay, then you get the Coke and hookers then, and I'll get the Bentley and drive in.
Works for me.
I'm pretty sure that Father Larry Duff was before Kenny in South Park. Is that right?
He would have been, because South Park wouldn't even have started this point.
Yeah. So he was doing this stuff.
Yeah, very true, actually.
Going out of his way to die every week.
Yeah.
Did we ever actually see him dying?
That was the point I was going to make. So what we've seen so far...
Or get mashed up in some way, you know.
Well, he drove a car off a cliff.
Yeah.
But he seems to have survived. And this time he...
Possible.
Yeah. He got a knife thrown at him. Now, it could have landed anywhere.
Now, that's more believable.
Yeah.
That's more believable.
There's an amazing sound effect, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the knife. Squelch.
See, I'd imagine it must have went into his thigh or something, just the way the sound cue went. But the car that went over the cliff was like a muscle car of some sort. Like it was like he's terrific fun. he doesn't do things by half measures. So he might have had an ejector seat for all you know.
There you go.
I mean, he's a bit of a risk taker, but like he volunteers to be on a knife throwing participant. So you know,
priests are often like that, though, aren't they? They want to be fun and get involved.
Oh yeah,
in things,
be the jovial one.
Be seen to be getting involved in things. You know, that's believable.
And then we get onto the iconic line, the all-purpose sentence, something like that would be an ecumenical matter. So, how many times have you used that organically in a sentence?
Well, I do remember. Not for this show. I remember when I watched the show, probably for as a teenager, the second or third time, or whatever. I did look up what ecumenical meant because it is not a word I was familiar with. But I'm glad it exists. It seems like a good thing.
Yeah, well, I think it just means there's an ecumenical council in the Vatican,
right?
And I think it just therefore became just all-purpose word for religious affairs or something. What does the definition you came up with?
What it actually means is bringing different branches of Christianity closer together and how to do that.
Oh,
so
okay.
Actually it's
perfectly
basically
apt.
a good thing, and indeed pretty much everything would be an ecumenical matter.
Well, exactly. So he's found the perfect all-purpose sentence then.
Yeah, it doesn't get audibly as big a laugh as I expect, which I think is true of a lot of physical jokes, because obviously the audience sees the thing before we're shown the shot of it. But when we see the flip chart, that would be an ecumenical matter. And then two, yes, those are the only phrases.
They were going to teach
you.
us.
He teaches them in that order.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Father Jack is so unlikely to say yes.
Yeah.
Ted starts him off with relatively simple, that would be an ecumenical matter, before graduating to yes.
That's level 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was brilliant. But that
it's amazing how much of a memorable character and how much energy Frank Kelly is able to do when he really doesn't do or say anything. The vast majority of the time he is just sat there doing nothing and he's just trotted out for like a one-word joke. And how memorable he is and how often people quote him. And it's the bit you remember from the show, if anything. It's amazing how that works. This might be, I haven't looked it up, but this might be his kind of longest bit on-screen talking in the whole series. It's quite possible.
Probably, probably, that he's so front and centre of the action. But yeah, I mean, he can just 4 words, or 5 words, whatever it is, he managed to... That would be an ecumenical...
Which it does eventually get him saying it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He does get to the point where Jack can actually trot it out.
Yep.
And on cue as well. Yeah, I mean, that's brilliant. Elocution, all it takes is a bit of temptation with a drink.
Yep.
And, you know, you can get...
So my French teacher did it.
Yeah? What, just plied you with alcohol while teaching you French?
Yeah, and other things.
Ted's plan works. I think we shouldn't forget this fact.
Yeah.
That Ted's plan of teaching these 2 phrases for quite a lot of the episode... that works really well. It's only for other reasons that it all goes wrong.
It was Dougal's plan.
It
was the one who suggested.
He says we could train him like a dog, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So they're working like a dream team, and Dougal and Ted, it works.
Yeah. Well, exactly. There was a point when Jack came in and introduced himself to the priest, or to the bishop, sorry, who then they referred to him as Father Hackett. so they actually give him his proper title. And he plays the part well, and genuinely, at that moment, they're swimming, they're home free.
Yeah.
It's only the input of the bishops themselves that starts putting things out of whack, out of kilter. Oh yeah, you have a few other notes here that you wanted to bring up here. The props man, Tim Youngman.
Oh yeah, I think this is a really good episode for props, and there's loads of good episode for props in this, but there's so much stuff in it that someone had to make. We've got all the books, you've got the bathroom, you've got the Holy Stone itself, you've got the sign with, the £20 thing taped over the top. You got a Ferrero Rocher pyramid.
That's the other bit that I just kind of think, that and the Kennedy gag. I think those two bits.
It's dated.
You can do better than that, fellas.
It was. I think it was funny at the time.
It would have been funny at the time.
But it's been so long since we've seen Ferrero Rocher adverts.
But I mean, like, anyone could just quote any sitcom could just quote.
That's one type of joke, and it's only used one. Like, often you hear people like using song lyrics in conversation, and that's supposed to be funny. It's funny once, and so he only does it once. So it's kind of but I just want to say the prop guy, Tim Youngman, went on to do a lot of other stuff like Gavin and Stacey, Phoenix Nights, Vicar of Dibley. He's had quite a successful career in comedy props. Yeah. So any young comedy people at home, get into props.
Well, you mentioned the props. Actually, I attributed that in a previous episode to Declan Lowney's directorial choices. So maybe I misappropriated the.
I don't know. I mean,
but he probably said, "I want a book." Well, obviously, I want Gary Lineker's big book of ghost stories.
Yep.
But he said, "Right, this is the way I want it." Now the props man has to then manufacture that, and he would say, "I want a bathroom that is desperately pink."
Yep.
And then somebody has to design that. So it did take the overall vision. And you mentioned Declan Lowney. He directed a film called Celtic Woman: A New Journey.
It's a concert. Actually, it's a film concert. It's incredible. It's one of the best concerts I've ever seen on film. I mean, it's really like they've changed their lineup over the years, Celtic Women, but like back when that concert was, they were fantastic. And I think it's interesting that he's done Father Ted, which did very well. He did that, which did very well.
Was this before or after Ted?
Oh, it would have been a few years after, but not by much. And it's interesting because they're two, clearly celebratory pieces about Irish culture,
right?
But not similar in any way at all.
So what is it? Is it like Enya sort of stuff, or like?
No, it's much better than that. It's traditional kind of Irish music, but performed very well, basically.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah.
So he has got quite a big range then.
Yeah, he's done loads of stuff.
Yeah. Well, we'll get back to the episode at hand because we're only about a quarter of the way through and we're running out of time very, very quickly. I did want to bring up Mrs Doyle. Now, as I said, this is probably her biggest episode as far as screen time is concerned, because she has actually a plot in this one, in that her glasses or her contacts have been stolen by a dog.
I love that line. The dog ran off with them.
Yeah, how did the dog actually conspire to get these things? But then she has a pair of glasses.
That's what Father Ted is about.
Yeah,
gags that would not be in any other show ever. That's what I mean.
Right? Yes. Yeah. That sort of elevates it above the sort of standard. But the Ferrero Rocher, I mean, that I still quote that. Oh, with these Ferrero Rocher, you're spoiling us.
Well, if it had been like,
who is it giving you Ferrero Rocher?
The ambassador, clearly.
Oh yeah, okay.
when I go around the ambassador's restaurant, do you remember that ad? By the way, there was like the camera panned in.
Vaguely do, yeah.
Well, the camera panned in from outside a window into the window, and then just sort of like as if somebody was sneaking into the party.
Right.
And that's when it was kind of creepy. Like
incredibly awful advert, but everybody remembers it.
That's like
I think they've been usurped now by those Lindt chocolate balls. The ones they're really good.
Well, they're easier stacked as well, I think, are they?
I think they come individually wrapped, but with twisty ends, instead of in a cup. So I don't know, but I think generally those are what you see now.
But she was very excited this was going to be her career high point.
Yeah.
And at no point does she say the phrase "I'll go on." So
that's true.
Again, it was 25 times in one episode.
Which episode was that?
That was the one with Henry Sellers. Which one to take the sherry.
Right.
Apart from that, she's only said it about 4 times. Do you know what I mean? So I do. This is going to be a running gag in our running theme in the podcast. Is
what is or is not a catchphrase?
Well, is that it's attributed to her more than maybe it should have been, because that one episode, just that clip, is used relentlessly in clip shows now.
Yeah, I'd never really thought about that.
And I think they're much more creative than just saying "I'll go on."
Yeah.
They're not just piping out the catchphrase. They're saying the same sentiment, just with different words, much more creatively. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Well, this one is kind of the opposite because the idea is she's lost her context, so she comes in with a tray but leaves before anybody
Yeah.
can actually get any snacks.
it's
So it's like instead of "I'll go on," it's like no,
yeah, you can't have any.
show them to the guests,
there
take
was-
them away again.
There was an example of that last week as well when Father Ted actually gave in and had a bit of cinnamon cake.
That's my favourite Mrs Doyle line of all time.
Yeah.
Are you sure? There's cocaine in it. I mean, again, that's like a dog ran off with them. How do you come up with getting it so confused?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
very funny.
But it was a wonderful piece of physical comedy when she's going round in her state of blindness, the three bishops. Now she's very close to them.
Walk
but
straight out.
Yeah, and she managed to actually address each bishop one by one, but still not have them get a sweet off the thing.
Yeah.
I love stuff like that. Any excuse for a character who can see to now not be able to see, or somebody who's completely sensible and they're drunk, but not in a way that people are actually drunk, like in a TV way people are drunk, or they've taken some medicine for something and now suddenly they're completely crazy.
They're a bit spaced out.
I love stuff like that. It's good fun.
Yeah.
She wants to be the perfect host. This is the tragedy, but she fails to offer any, branded chocolate snacks
Yeah, exactly.
to anyone in real life.
And she goes off into, well, I was about to say hysterics. It's more like catatonic state when the thought of the housekeeper serving the tea, and that's the end of her for the episode. Then, which I felt a bit let down by because there was a lot more potential in that story, and she's just dragged off in as I said, a catatonic state, and we don't see her again for the rest of the episode until she declares that one of the bishops is dead.
Right.
So she doesn't actually. It felt a bit unresolved, that. Or something.
It gets worse for Mrs Doyle, and not only does she fail to serve them tea properly, but then one of the guests dies. I mean, she'll never, she can't go around the sort of housekeepers union anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. She can't bring that story up. Like they'll all be asking, so how did the three bishops go? Well, I misidentified the body when I was trying to as a piece of garbage. Dougal's incense. He gets confused with his incense with his insects.
Yeah.
And you had a bit of a theory about that. What was that?
I have a theory because that, that joke. You can imagine somebody writing that. It's funny. It's okay. But then earlier on in the episode, when Dougal says, "What's the big deal? The bishops come in, they strip down the wallpaper, they fumigate the place. Not a problem." Now that's so out there that somebody could confuse bishops with exterminators. I suspect that the insects joke came first, and then the really out there one about him confusing bishops with something to do with insects was put in afterwards. A little bit like in The Only Fools and Horses, I imagine, where they're dressed in fancy dress to go to a party, then they turn up and actually it turns out it's now a wake, so they're the only ones in fancy dress. I suspect that came first, and then he thought, hey, hang on a minute. One, since they're dressed as Batman and Robin, but I don't know.
I've got an episode yet.
I think things are often written backwards. I don't know.
My favourite moment from that Only Fools and Horses is that Trigger's there, and he's come as James Bond, and he's like, I feel like a right twat now because I came as James Bond in a black suit and a black tie, and it turned out to be a funeral.
It fits right in.
There's definitely I can sort of see a link between Trigger and Dougal. There's a similar it's not just they're stupid, but they've taken it to an extreme where it's like surreal, the mistakes that they make, and like what their version of like reality is just mental.
Graham has said in interviews that he was looking to get a character like, well, he quoted Baldric. Baldric was the one he wanted to model him on. I think it's actually a better one than Baldric.
Yeah,
although Baldric, it's hard to pin down because obviously it was a different character in each series of Blackadder. But I think it hits it better, and I think it's better acted. I think as the dimwit, I think, of all of them.
Possibly, yeah. He definitely gets across the childlike innocence of it very well. Yeah, he's up there with Matt LeBlanc for that, I think, probably.
In Friends.
Yeah. He does it very well too. Joey and Dougal are very very similar characters. Yeah. Because actually, stupid people who are just stupid, that's not that funny, and they're not particularly lovable. It has to be the other qualities that come with being childlike.
Just their
as well.
overt positivity and stuff. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Dougal's an amazing character for them to get away with because how much he's in it, and
Yeah.
and how extreme he is, and yet it doesn't seem like, oh, this stupid man again. I mean, it's like, it never gets grating, like how much is in it at all, or how stupid he is, or anything.
That's because Ted is there to say what we would say.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
he's allowed to be mean because he likes him, and they're so he's allowed to be the.
Yeah, Ted actually addresses his stupidity, and he does it on numerous occasions, and rather than in other sitcoms it would just be let pass.
And yet, standard sitcom rule, continually forgets.
Yeah.
He's always surprised, as if it's the first time every time that he can be this stupid. It's great. Sitcom rule.
Yeah, at the blessing of the Holy Stone, there's a nice little tiny joke that I just want to bring up. They have their blessing, and all the priests say "Amen, Amen," and then Dougal,
Amen.
Amen.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant.
So again, he's spent his 7 years at the seminary, and clearly nothing's gone in because all the heaven and hell and everlasting life. That's the bit I have difficulty with.
I think actually, for a show about Catholic priests, for a sitcom about Catholic priests, it is very respectful of Catholicism, generally speaking.
You reckon? Yeah.
I think this show, I can't think of an episode where Catholicism philosophically gets more of a kicking than this one, and even then, it's very gentle.
It's this same episode where Ted's coming up with the ecumenical matter line. So he wants to teach it to Jack, and he says that's what's so great about Catholicism.
Yep,
it's so vague.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what it's all about.
Yeah, exactly.
Just kind of, it's not a positive thing to say, but it's not like, it's a different case from saying something really, really damning about the damaging effects of a religion or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just saying something that's like undermines it in the most kind of spoofy way you could come up with.
That, like, for me personally, and for a lot of people I would know probably, and I mentioned this in an earlier episode, is like that puncturing of that complete reverence.
Yeah, puncturing is the right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like that was revelatory for a lot of people, because suddenly then the Catholic Church wasn't this, demagoguery of whatever they say goes. Like in Ireland, like 1995, they'd just passed a divorce referendum. It had to go to a referendum to legalise divorce because the power of the Catholic Church was such a figure. It was in the Constitution of Ireland when the state was formed, and they came in, and as I said, they didn't savage them. If they had just savaged them, it would have just turned people off.
Right.
But the fact that they're able to pinprick just at the fabric of it, it meant that the general message of geez, this is all stupid. Just relax a bit.
Yeah.
I think it got across much better.
That again, actually, if we're going to raise negative criticisms, that'd probably be my biggest problem with the show. Bishops are going to be very, very aware of all of these kind of arguments.
Yeah.
And in absolutely no way is any bishop not going to have heard that some people don't believe in God and some people don't believe in miracles and find the whole thing crazy. This is not going to be the first time he's hearing it. But I guess maybe he's never heard it from a priest, and so it just about flies as being believable.
They sort of slipped in a line about where he goes, well, Father Maguire, I've been struggling with my conscience or whatever, and then you've tipped me over the...
Yeah. Well,
they sort of like shove it in clearly.
It's well packaged, yeah.
Well, we haven't actually spoken about the bishops. That was Bishop O'Neill, who joined the hippie movement very quickly. But he had his do-rag packed. He had his...
he's got his hippie friends. Where did they come from?
Exactly. He had all the do-rag and the hippie clothes already packed. So I think he was just ready for somebody to give him that little push, and it just happened to be Dougal who he asked. Like, if he had asked Ted, you ever have any doubts? Ted might have been, well, I've doubts about my conscience because I've got
Ted would just suppress
temptation.
it all in some lower part of his brain. He's suppressed the fact of what happened with that money resting in his account. He just suppresses everything underneath and sort of on the surface.
So if it just happened that
tends to be a proper, worthy priest or whatever.
Yeah. If it just happened that it was Dougal that he managed to walk down the road with, and that's
who has no filter on his thoughts and just says whatever he comes out.
And the other two bishops, now Bishop Jordan didn't really have much in the argument of the existentialism of the Catholic Church. He was just there as the character who has the tragic heart attack. But Bishop Fax, he was obviously very, very stringent in his beliefs.
Yep.
To the point where he drove Jack to hideous acts
Yeah.
of
it's an amazing
bodily
scene.
invasion.
It's like seeing them kind of, I don't know what B movie or something. The Jack, he sort of leaps to his feet, screaming, grabs the Holy Stone. And sort of, like, you can't really describe it verbally. It's amazing to look at.
Well, yeah, it does look like the Attack of the 50-Foot Monster or something, because he just picks up this little stone, which, in your head, when you saw the little diagram of it on the calendar, you assumed it was like 12 foot
that's another great
tall.
thing.
Yeah.
It makes it look huge.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But Bishop Fax, he's one of those people that just fucking just invade your personal space so much with his prodding finger, and just I used to know somebody who insisted, and every time they were chatting to you, just squeeze the top of your shoulder muscle, and
Like
it's
you're a
so
cat.
yeah. And it was like I think it was some sort of
that's
male
worse.
dominance thing he wanted to
Squeezing.
Yeah, well, it just get you there and go, we're good buddies, aren't we? Or, you're going to have a good time tonight, and just keep doing that. And it was like, I was ready just to lower my shoulder and just swing at
Holy
him.
Relic
I have to
available.
say, it sounds quite homoerotic.
Well, yeah, possibly, but it was, I just find it so annoying. And so
I can see that, yeah.
if you have somebody just constantly trapping at your shoulder, whether to hammer home their point, almost to a literal degree, you are going to have a situation where Jack, who's got violent tendencies, as we know, and he's very creative with his violent tendencies, and he desecrates
That'll do. That object is the nearest object. That'll do.
and
That's a weapon.
Yeah, he sticks it where the sun don't shine. Like that was a big fucking conclusion to that storyline. Like, I can't imagine any other sitcom going to that extent. Like
No,
Basil
I mean,
Fawlty wouldn't have done that, for example.
So it's strange because of the world it creates. It doesn't seem as harsh as it is.
Yeah, it's
A bishop getting a rock stuffed up his arse.
Yeah.
That's pretty nasty.
Yeah,
But
it's sexual assault of
because of the way it's
worst
packaged,
order.
and because of how silly it is, and just this little bubble they live in, it doesn't seem so bad. Even the other bishop dying, it because it comes so late, and you only see it for such a short period of time, and it was so silly anyway. It doesn't hit you like a real death.
Yeah,
You know, and I think that's part of the charm of the show, really.
Well, exactly. The cartoonishness sort of takes away that. They have sort of cartoon violence as humour as well, which is hard to pull off in live action. Very hard to pull off. I mean, Bottom did it. I don't know how successful. I didn't particularly like Bottom.
Wasn't as good as it wasn't on the same kind of Americanized, polished level as Father Ted's. No, I don't think so. It's amazing. I mean, obviously, I'm a comedy writer. I know, like 100 comedy writers, and how often people say, "Oh, I want it to be," or "I'm trying to make it a bit like Father Ted's."
Right. Yeah.
And it's not that easy.
Yeah. Exactly.
Maybe you can do the silly jokes. Maybe you can, but setting it up in a believable way
that
people buy into the characters and accept all of this silliness, it's not as easy as it sounds. It really isn't.
And exactly, like, it feels like it should be such an obvious idea. 3 priests on an island, and they have wacky adventures, but it's not like this. It's all the little threads, all the little elements that all compile to make this wonderful whole that is the series All Fathered Head. Like, it is. I don't think it'll ever be recreated anywhere near as successfully.
No.
Like, can you even just think of a show since then that is anywhere near as rich and as as wholesome as
Peep Show? Well, I don't know if Peep Show is wholesome.
Well,
It's not wholesome.
I didn't mean wholesome as
But,
in family values wholesome,
The only show I can think of that is in any way similar in terms of mood is the IT Crowd. But then that's not so surprising, is it?
It's the same.
But it doesn't have like all the different things going on. It's
Yeah.
pretty one trick, isn't it?
It's not as deep. No,
And-
you're
I mean,
right.
one of the things that is great about Father Ted is like half of the bloody episode, like pretty much every week, will be in the actual real Irish countryside.
Yeah.
So it's not like just this is studio sitcom. This is what happens. People walking around the other side of a table, jumping through the window or something. I mean,
eight people having dinner all at the same side of a table.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
it's like I think that's very underrated. That I mean, you go back to fucking Dad's Army or something, and they spend half the episode stomping about in a real field or something. I mean, that definitely.
Well, it lends it authenticity
It's a bit
immediately.
literal, I suppose, but I mean, the outdoor stuff, something it gives it another.
Yeah, it
Another element.
elevates it with as you say, instead of just trapping it in one room like Only Fools and Horses was for the most part, just in that living room, wasn't it? And every so often they would go to an Indian restaurant or something. But whereas Ted would genuinely go to a book signing or a fun fair, or it never felt out of place. Like I don't think anyway.
No, that's right.
I
don't think the writers were limiting themselves. I don't think they were trying to necessarily oh, let's go out and have him go to places. It was just naturally what was happening, and they didn't have that thought of, oh, this is going to cost more money to shoot.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not their problem. I think
It's part of the character of it, definitely.
Yeah, the aesthetic and everything as well. Yeah. So we'll wrap it up there then with poor old Bishop Fax having the Holy Stone of Clonrickert removed. I do want to bring up the fact that Larry Duff was mentioned because he was a friend of Bishop Fax. What adventures do you reckon those two were getting up to?
Which one was he the...
He was the one that had the stone up his arse.
Yeah, the angry one, the poker.
The poker, yeah.
That's interesting. What would they talk about?
Yeah, exactly.
They don't seem... Well, but then Larry Duff is tremendous fun, as we've established. Bishop Fax is quite high energy also.
Yeah.
But in a different way, so maybe they kind of get each other.
They just sort of, they have a
like an
rapport.
intensity of their faith.
I feel slightly bad that I've been allowed to come here and pretend to know what the sort of jokes that relate to Catholicism are about, because I don't know much about it. And I certainly don't wish to suggest that it's any worse or any better than any other religion.
It's definitely better than some of them. I think we all know which ones.
I don't know if I agree, having been brought up as one.
No,
necessarily.
fair enough.
So,
I mean, it's pretty sort of honest about the stuff it says. It says you can't do this, you can't do this. We're going to be tough on it. I mean, there's a sort of honesty to it.
Yeah, well, see what's allowed and what's not has changed so often that you can't even keep up anymore. And for most people now, like genuinely, well, I was going to mass every week on Sunday mornings, and I'd never ever listened. I was just daydreaming and singing Michael Jackson songs to myself the whole time, and getting like my uncle brought me to a Good Friday mass, which is about fucking 3 hours long, because they have a passion, the Mel Gibson passion. Oh, surprised they have an enactment. Well, they have an enactment of that now. It's not an enactment that'll be entertaining, where they actually move around,
right.
And they just have them standing in the pulpit, just reading the lines, and it's Jesus Christ, it is boring.
Well, they want to hammer it home, like how awful the suffering would have been, which you can agree with. It doesn't necessarily mean all the other stuff is true.
Well, I mean, there probably was somebody, Jesus of Nazareth, who did rise up against, the ruling power.
There's very good evidence.
Yeah, but like whenever you see him depicted, he's this really sullen and boring guy, and you think, who would ever drop all their fishing nets to follow him? Why is he never given like a sort of charisma or a sort of a passion or just an energy or something? Why is he not charming? Why is he always come into the light, boy, let the children come to me? Like, it's always so dead and like, it just annoys me.
This is you're absolutely right. This is all artistic interpretation, isn't it? Like, because there's if you think about how thick the New Testament is and how little of it is actual direct speech attributed to Jesus, it doesn't say he said it in this way.
Yeah,
it doesn't say what his mood was or if it did he wave his hands about or not. So yeah, you're right. It could have been a lot more entertaining.
Yeah,
probably was.
If he was able to actually rise up and form a new religion,
right,
he would have necessarily been. But you never see that portrayed. Yeah, I genuinely think that people nowadays just go to mass for the social aspect of it, because you're in a small town, you're all working in separate different towns and stuff. After you've left school, you generally don't see people unless you're all going to mass at the same time on a Sunday morning, and people they stand outside for a good 45 minutes, an hour, just chatting to people, and it's the only time they might see people all week. And it does maintain that sense of community and stuff.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I get the impression there's kind of a directness to it, though, in terms of like something happens in the Catholic mass. Because I mean, I went to a Quaker school when I was a teenager,
right? Okay,
and it's basically the only thing it has in common with like other basically Christian denominations and stuff like that is congregating in a room, really, in a sort of basically religious kind of context every morning for like your school morning assembly thing. Except the Quaker version is you assemble in a room just to do fuck all, and there's no like hymns or
I'm
prayers.
liking the sound of this.
Yeah.
It's like you couldn't do the Quaker version of Father Ted because every episode would be like the Father Stone episode,
Right,
Just
okay,
people
right.
sitting around
not
for
saying.
a good bit of
banking and making porridge.
Yeah.
No, not even doing any of those things. Just a bit of silence, just sort of sitting around and like.
Oh, just piousness, yeah.
Why are we here?
Yeah.
Why are we here?
But like,
why are we here? Like, why are we in this room to sit here and do nothing?
Well, I don't know about yourselves, but I was dragged to mass every Sunday, and I was making it harder. I was genuinely making it harder and harder for people to get me up on Sunday mornings. I would just not get up on Sunday mornings, so they eventually got the message and just stopped trying to wake me. And it would be like that was the only time of the week I'd have the house to myself. Would be everyone's at mass, and I've only ever gone to weddings and funerals since. I've never actually gone to a run-of-the-mill mass in about 20 years nearly.
I think I've gone to one, but then I've never been Catholic, so I don't think I would have done. I've got an image in my head from as a child, having like a wafer on my tongue and wine and stuff. But I mean, that could have been at my aunt's house.
Right? Yeah. Well, see, it might have been a wedding or something you were at, or a funeral.
No, I don't think so. I was saying I can't remember, and my parents weren't Catholics. That doesn't make any sense.
Is why you were having the...
Yeah, well, I don't know why I would have been there. It could have been a dream.
Oh. Maybe you're just envious and you sort of conjured these ideas.
Well, I think my only experience of it at all is I went to a wedding a couple of years ago up in Manchester, and it only becomes apparent that the place is a Catholic church once you're inside, because from the outside it doesn't look at all like a church building. It looked like a sort of community centre building or something. So architecturally it was not like a religious place, but inside, obviously, once you're in there, you see all the trappings around you. So I don't know what's the history of that. But
well, they're always beautiful buildings. Like churches are routinely like the most beautiful buildings in towns, and they genuinely are. And I love nice architecture. Churches are always beautiful buildings, even the modern ones that don't go with the spire idea. They still are like beautiful works of art as far as the architecture goes. Yeah. And even like the 12 Stations of the Cross, which is 12 artistic depictions of Jesus being crucified. They're always like lovely.
In case you forget.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they're always beautiful like works of art, and that's the one thing they did get on board with very quickly, like with Da Vinci and everything, and Michelangelo. They were the ones that made the Renaissance happen, almost to their own detriment without realizing it. But yeah. But on that cheery note,
yes,
I think
put the world to rights.
Yeah,
Take that, organised religion.
Yeah. Well, what do you think of the episode then? It's definitely for me a top fiver.
It's way up there. There's lots of things to like about it. Yeah, probably in top 5, or certainly in the top half for sure.
All right, and yourself, Olly?
Well,
you said your favourite episode.
Definitely the top 2. I think this is probably this discussion. I think brought up some of the bits that are really funny in this episode, and I'd probably say it's my favourite one. Right. But I mean, it's not about necessarily. You can watch all of them.
Well, exactly.
You don't need to choose one.
Well, it's just for completeness. At the end, I like to rank things, so I'm trying to pick 5 episodes at the end.
If I really had to choose, I would say I like all of the episodes in series 3 the best.
Really? Right, okay.
Probably, because they seem to have properly gotten the hang of this
they've hit the nail in the head by that point. And it's odd that season 2 is actually the longest season. Season 3 is actually got less episodes. So series 2 is 10 episodes, I think, and then season 3 is 8.
Sounds right.
So they're obviously a bit more self-critical maybe, and just decided, right, we're not going to do another episode if it's not going to hit the standards.
Well, they did plenty, but they did. Yeah, I think they did the right kind of number overall.
Yeah, well, 24 episodes plus Christmas special is...
It's so much harder here because the writers have to write them themselves. Like if you've got a sitcom, you're writing all the episodes.
Yeah.
You can't
I'd really like
possibly
that, though,
do 24.
I mean, that's what bothers me a bit about a lot of American shows, is they just get ground on and on and on forever.
Well, 24 episodes every year.
Yeah.
Like that's a monumental workload to bring on yourself. Like.
I mean, there's plenty of American shows that I really like. I mean, I've really enjoyed loads of episodes of The Simpsons or like Futurama or, I'm trying to think of one that's not a cartoon.
Seinfeld?
Yeah, there's some really good Seinfeld ones, but they don't know when to stop. I mean,
they do when the moment it becomes unprofitable.
Yeah.
Troy McClure said. But like in the American things, because it is so many episodes, and they sort of delegate to a group of writers, they do have sort of formula episodes then where maybe the 5th episode of each season will be the episode where they do something wacky with the format.
Yeah.
And there's ones that just hit all the Friends and Frasier all had an episode where somebody was stuck on a roof. Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
And I'm sure there's other ones that don't necessarily spring to mind.
Oh,
right
there's
away.
loads of them, aren't there? Like you've got 3 Thanksgiving dinners you have to attend in the
Yeah.
same day, or you've got 2 girlfriends and they're coming to the same event.
Yes,
and you for
yeah.
some reason have to wear a different hat, literally a different hat when you're
And
talking to each of them, stuff like that. Yeah.
They all have the lie hole episode as well, where they keep just digging a hole of lies, just deeper and deeper, instead of just saying, "Oh shit, I've double booked here. I've said to you that I'm going to be there, and I've said to you I'm going to be there. Obviously, I can't do both.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm going to do." Instead of doing that, they just keep.
Yeah.
That used to always annoy me. It's like, why don't you just say the fucking issue?
My least favourite sort of TV thing, sacrifice for story that you have, like in real life, right? If somebody comes in and it looks bad, you say, "Okay, I know this looks bad.
Yeah.
Just give me a minute and I can explain." In real life, the person says, "Okay," and they listen. But on TV, the person says, "No, I know exactly what's happening. I'm leaving now. I don't need an explanation. This is exactly how it looks."
I'm going to jump to this conclusion, and
Yeah.
you're going to have to get your own way out of it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right, well, so thanks very much for joining us then on our very first roadshow, on our title episode. Jordan Birch, who's just slurping the last wee drips of Stella out of his tin.
I have some left.
Yeah, oh yeah, he's got some left. And Olly Allsop, who's just drinking the last few slurps of what's that you're drinking?
It was a bottle of pale ale from the cafe. It turns out to serve booze, which is
I
exciting.
reckon. I reckon it's from Greenwich.
It says Meantime on it, London Meantime.
Mm.
And I actually stayed teetotal for this. I'm very proud of myself.
To the pub.
To the pub I'm actually going
Yeah.
to. Yeah, there's a Wetherspoons across the road, and you're all invited. But yeah, thank you very
I
much.
mean, the listener.
Well, the listeners can come too.
Hell of a round.
Yeah. Well, we've got about 50 regular listeners at the minute that I'm aware of. If they all want to come down for our next roadshow, which may or may not be in Edinburgh at the festival, I'm still trying to work out the.
You get like an audience for that.
You do like a question.
I would
time
love
format.
to. I would absolutely love to. I'm trying to make a tipping point for this to make it profitable. But yeah, so I'd love to be able to put it in front of an audience, even if it's an audience of 50 people. That would be amazing.
That's bigger than any audience I've ever had.
Well, it's bigger than. Well, I say that I've had audiences of nearly 100, over 100. So.
I've had audiences of 1.
But you're just is it stand up you're chatting?
Yeah.
See, I was in a play, so that doesn't really count.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was like 7 other people who were all bringing their friends. So
Right.
it was like a 6 degrees sort of thing.
Oh, we do.
But yeah, thank you very much for listening. We're on iTunes, so give us a rating and review. And I've been James McAnespy, and bless you.